Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. This is a quick recap of what happened last time during our live stream, and bringing us up to right about where we left off. So here's old me. Well, everyone is alive, and I think we have enough here to actually work with. Stupid as it sounds, this has life support, so does that and that. We got our tools and parts and a habitat. I and some solar panels. I think we can actually do something with this. So yes, for those of you that were wondering, we are exactly going to science something out of this. So our resident brilliant engineer, Laura Douglas, will exit the ascent vehicle. It is minus an engine, so it is unknown at this point if it can even make it to orbit. It currently does have a sub-zero TWR. Not, it's pretty much full of fuel, except for some of the thruster fuel that was used from the command pods themselves. But we do need to kind of figure out something. I have a plan, actually, for getting another engine to them. The food missiles, the resupplies, use the same Asterisk 2 engine that it is using for the ascent stage. We just need to buy the crew time to try to bombard them with life support supplies. So in the meantime, we're going to try to get something structured. Figured out down here. We don't have a whole lot of parts. Actually, a lot of our parts were in crates that were destroyed during the landing, but we do have a few here in this major container that was generally supposed to be for parts to fix broken rovers that will be absolutely inevitable. And through the magic of something, she can just kind of slide these pieces by walking on top of them and pushing. I don't know. I guess there's probably going to be some mechanical engineers who want to know exactly how the hell this works. This could be absolutely useful for transportation back home. But first thing we're going to do is get all of our major components somewhat close to one another. Thankfully, the one thing we can't lift can roll a little too well and bounce. If that thing blows up, it would be bad. Anyway, it does have ladders on the sides so that we can kind of mitigate that roll, but at some point we're going to need to get it upright again. And we did learn some tricks the last time that we had to fix a bunch of things on the surface of Mars, and it involves using antennas as, I don't know, jack stands, hydraulic lifts, perhaps. We do have this landing leg, but unfortunately, you can't retract it from the outside. You have to have a command part inside, and there is no command part attached to this. So even if she were to jump inside, there's just not a whole lot she can do there, and that sucks. So I was curious if the smaller or the long-range comms actually had the same physics. They do not. They are kind of physicsless, but we should have another short-range comm over here on this other solar tower. There it is. Now we've got it in our inventory, so we can go ahead and scurry on back to our habitat module and see if we can't lift this thing upright. We'll place the antenna a little further down and then hit extend. Yeah, a bit much on that one, just a bit much, but the process itself works, so we'll just roll it a little bit so that we can get to those two antennas, drop them both in our inventory, and try something a little more, I don't know, not quite so aggressive. Also, put this landing leg just up out of the way. That'll kind of act as a brace to keep it from flipping all the way over when we pop this antenna open. Boink. Almost. We'll try to use her helmet to wedge it the rest of the way. Not the best plan, but there it is, and mostly upright. So now all we have to do is remove that landing leg, and we should be the rest of the way upright. I just don't want it that close to a life support container. Yeah, this is the part where I'm figuring out you can't retract the dumb thing without having basically avionics control. So we'll just remove it instead and let this thing kind of flop down onto the dirt. There we go, and the landing leg starts to do its little landing leggy dance. Now, we do need to put a ladder on this ascent stage. The ladders were on the base plate for the base itself, so without a ladder, they don't really have a very good way of getting in or out of this thing. And thanks to the attachment nodes, it's still some wonky jumping that has to happen in order to get onto the ladder. We'll probably have to figure a different system or a better system for this at some point. Just, because otherwise it's just difficult. And here's the big problem. We have to switch through about 10,000 scattered little bits of debris before we can get back to what it was that we actually wanted to control. Yeah, figures, doesn't it? That's just real annoying. So we're going to let Laura Douglas top off her life support supplies and get her tool things together. Yeah, any attempt to slide the ascent stage on RCS proves fruitless, unfortunately. We're going to have to move it or lift it somehow to make repairs to the underside or to attach a fifth engine as per our previous plans, but that'll be fun. We'll get to that part later, I suppose, because it's not going to be easy. But we'll. The next step here is to get a rover up and working. Now we did have this command chair left in our cargo thing, and thank goodness, because otherwise we would be completely subject to the speed of light signal delay. This thing unfortunately did suffer some damage here in the wreck. We have a wheel that is not working. Nothing seems to be attached quite correctly. It's going to need some serious refurbishment. Now, this rover was intended to pick up life support drops and collect them and bring them back to the base so that they can be attached via these docking ports. Doesn't really look like that's going to work very well because we're going to have to remove some wheels to make this thing work again. And anything that is directly attached to a robotics part does not behave very kindly when you try to detach it from said robotics part. But our very first step is that before we can start refurbishing anything, we need to get the habitat module on the surface up and running. Oh boy, and it did not like me removing that life support tank. We need an avionics control, and the best one we have available to us is that rove mate from the other rover, which was our scientific collections rover thing. We're going to need that to give us any kind of avionics control so that we can just unlock the life support supplies contained within the habitat module to make it any kind of livable. Go figure. Also, that life support container thing there will be extra useful. That'll buy the crew in the ascent stage time when it comes time to make orbit to get there and make rendezvous. There's also an RTG and some science experiments, a antenna, and some laddery bits on this thing that I'm sure we can find useful to some degree or another. That will be absolutely fantastic. The rove mate core needs to be node attached. Of course it does. So we're just going to slap it just any old where as long as we can bring it back to the habitat module and get that sucker booted. That's what matters the most, although it will affect our electrical draw a little bit. That hopefully bringing that RTG will help mitigate some of those losses. That's kind of our plan anyway. It is going to be, well, a little more than interesting. Way more interesting than I had hoped it would ever be. But, man, thank goodness this rover at least mostly survived, even if it's only kind of intact and 3/4 functional. Whatever, as long as it works. So, and thank goodness we can lift this rove mate core. We're just going to go ahead and slap this thing on top of our parts bin here. It's just the most convenient place to put it right now. And it's still at a point where we can get access to it to I don't know, lift it or move it or anything else that we need to do. So with a quick attachment of some hoses, and we'll just dump this science experiment that we've been carrying around for absolutely no reason whatsoever. We'll jump inside and unlock the life support. So finally, our habitat is booted and running and able to sustain the crew. And it looks like it has enough on board to keep one Kerbal alive for about a year. And we don't even have all of the supplies unlocked, nor all of the supplies even attached. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe I budgeted a lot more life support on this thing than I initially thought. I thought I had 1 year for 4 Kerbals, hands down. I think I actually had 2 years for 4 Kerbals, which, well, had this mission not crashed into the surface into 1,000 pieces, would have been a very, very pleasant surprise. Anyway, this is coming to about the end of the live stream. I do have a bunch more that I did after the show, so I will turn you now over to that old me. Hey everybody, and it's been a couple of hours for our brave Kerbals here, and now that we have this little thing set up, it's a terrible idea because every time we switch objects like this, it kind of bounces, and one of these days it's going to explode. So we need to do something about cleaning up all of this junk that we have sitting around, and we need to get the crew in here because our little lander friend over here has about 2 days of life support, and with it being way the hell over there, I don't know if we're going to... I mean, we can get more life support supplies to it, but it's going to be difficult, and we need them to be able to survive down here on the surface for a little while. So we're gonna do some collection runs, I guess. I was hoping to consolidate this on top of this and move this to someplace else, but I don't think that's really going to happen. Really, we need to consolidate some parts. So Laura Douglas here is going to EVA and get right back to work. She's got a lot of cleaning up to do. Thankfully, we have this nifty rover doohickey that we're going to... I could have used tab for that. Inventory, equip. Yeah, we could have been doing things a whole lot differently / better. First things first, let's get this RTG wired in quite precariously here. We're going to collect these antennas because I think one thing we're absolutely going to have to do is lift up the ascent stage and get it suspended a little bit. Let's force close that one. Oh, it's too far. Really? Really? You're going to do that to me today? Well, while we're here, we can just start bolting parachutes onto things. If we had a control core that we could spare, we could attach all of this junk to it and then blow it up. And that would make things a whole lot easier. I think she can get almost all the way to the top. Good. We can grab this. Get that in our inventory. That's 4 antennas. That should be enough to raise up our descent stage. We'll just have her jump down. But before we go and do any of that, we're gonna clean some things. Can we grab this? Ah, yes, we can. Can't quite get close enough to mount it there, but we can eventually. I don't know if that's going to be too far away regardless or not, but this does have functional solar panels on it, which is going to greatly aid our cause. Dang it. Really? Oh no, this has to be on a node? Oh, well, that goes about changing the landscape a little bit. It has a functional solar panel. Just one. And hopefully that will remain oriented in a good direction. What are you doing? Okay, good. Now, I guess we should get the rover and start attaching things to other things. What we should do first is fix this rover. So we're actually going to drive it a little bit. You can see how it's got just a bunch of things that are all haphazard and such, and we're actually going to attach one of these life support tanks to the ascent stage. That should give us a little more time to make rendezvous, I guess, but let's get it clear of this stuff first. So, whoa, no, back it up, back it up. You can see we have a wheel that's not working, and everything else on it is just janky as all hell. So let's lock the brakes, get to work. So first point of order, let's make this rover slightly less janky than it already is. Of course, all of our unjankiness will be rejankied by the fact that it's Kerbal attachment system and it's Kerbal space program, and next to nothing works as intended here. So just as we use the antennas to flip over the habitat module, here we're going to use them as like a lift. A car jack, if you will, to raise up the rover above the ground. If you attach a wheel and that wheel is clipped into the surface, when the physics rendering kicks in, it shoots the whole thing way up into the air. It was a big problem that we had during our last Mars mission thing, and it's been a problem on the moon as well. Things are just a little wonky and weird, but basically we can't really attach the wheels to the hinges because they will register to the base of the hinge and not the hinge face itself. Kerbal attachment system and Infernal Robotics do not play well together. So any chance of this thing being able to scoop up those life support pods as intended might be going out the window. We'll actually get to a little demonstration of that a little later on, but we can start reattaching frame bits, trying to level out our wheelbase as best we can. We will be trying to get rid of these hinges as soon as possible. The less Kraken bait we can include on our little rovery friend here, I think the better. And so with the rear two wheels reattached onto subframe instead of hinge, that should make our wheelbase nice and even. And yeah, sure enough, this thing kind of drives like a champion now. So we can come out here and start collecting bits of things. Man, maybe I got that wrong. It's been a while, because here we are reattaching another antenna to use as a jack stand. Oh yeah, I did the back two. Now it's time to do the front two. Get those two off the hinges and attach directly to the subframe to even out our wheelbase. So with one front wheel on and good, we'll move our antenna over to the other side, and then raise the rover, detach the wheel, retach the wheel, hopefully getting it on correctly despite it wavering on that lift pretty precariously. I would not want to crawl under that rover while it was pivoting around like that. Absolutely terrifying. All right, and now all four wheels articulate and move, and everything looks good. We're going to grab this command pod from our other rover, because why the hell not? We only have this one command chair, and if it fails, or if we lose it, or if it explodes, we have no direct control over anything rovery. That would be a problem. So next step, this life support pod, which might actually be pretty critical to our endeavors here, has rolled a long way away. And the whole point of having the wheels on the hinges was so that we could belly out the rover and get things to dock. You see, it's just not quite low enough to scoop that to make contact with that docking port and get a good lock. So that kind of kills our plans for our normal resupply. Now, the good news here is that this one at least was light enough to where a single Kerbal can pick it up and move it. So we're just going to attach it manually to the docking port. Now, I would have liked to attach it docking port to docking port. It would have just made things easier, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. Now, this was actually the part we're grabbing now was the node for the base that we would have docked those food missiles, snack bombs 2 with this rover. After it would go out, collect a pod, bring it back, and then attach it to one of these on the base itself for resupply. Any attempt to push the ascent stage, now that we have more mass on our rover, is also fruitless, unfortunately. So she's just going to drive around out here and collect random bits so that we don't have to do as much jumping around to get to the place of the person that we actually want to be dealing with. So, yeah. Anyway, if we can reattach this life support pod with its docking port facing out, and if we can manually collect the snack bombs, we may still be able to resupply the Mars base as necessary, although without the science lab and without most of their scientific equipment, there's not a large point for them to stay on Mars other than just because they can, but we'll figure out a whole lot of that stuff later. So right now we're just out picking up our trash because you should keep Mars clean and try to consolidate as many of these things as possible. There was a quick part where I paused the game to probably go do something because this is legit like 2 hours of footage that we have just had to cut down a whole lot. This took so much longer than I ever thought it would. But, you know, these things, they do happen. And now here's the problem with wheels attached to hinges. Yeah. If you try to pick up the hinge and move it, only half the hinge actually moves. The other half explodes, and sometimes that creates a huge problem. Sometimes it's just a smallish problem. But Infernal Robotics does not like Kerbal Attachment System. They fight a lot. Anyway, so we're going to detach this from the rover and then reattach it to our base just as best we can, and hopefully as low as we can. We definitely want a Kerbal to be able to lift it in place, but that, you know, kind of works. We'll just weld it wherever we feel like it. That's fine too. And we should probably go ahead and attach this other life support pod. We do have some sciencey bits here. That'd be neat if we could actually use at least one of these, maybe 2. We'll have to have our scientists come out and reset our goo container, but it's a good bet that we already have goo science from this particular biome. It's just also a good bet that that has not been run through the laboratory, or if it has, then I really messed up on that very first Mars landing and bringing any of that data back to Earth, although I'm pretty sure that was the one where I brought the data back to Earth. It was the second landing where I left all the data in the lab, which is why that lab has such an incredible backlog. It would be actually kind of nice to get one of these scientists at least back to orbit so that we could get them in the laboratory and start working. Anyway, we're going to try to offload some of our extra equipment here. We're going to keep these 4 comms antennas because we're going to try to use that same theory that we used on repairing this rover to, oh boy. Yeah, drop an Infernal Robotics part on the ground, watch it bounce back up into the sky because the hinges, only half of it will move, the other half will snap to it once it is rendered back into physics range, and that creates an impact event, which causes a reaction and things. It's all just weird. The ghosts of Mars are terrifying and violent. So this other life support pod, we can just kind of push around into place. That's kind of neat. So we'll just bully this thing across the sands here and get it closer. We'll just try to weld some random parts to it to clean up our mess. But we'll get this one facing in a different direction, sticking out of the habitat module, because why not? And these large thruster ports that were on the descent stage of the base, we might be able to correct for some of our lacking TWR on our ascent stage with these things, instead of having to add another engine from a drop pod that we may or may not be able to collect and may or may not be able to move to anywhere, may or may not be able to deorbit appropriately. There's a lot of ifs there, so having a contingency plan as far as getting them off the surface safely is probably a pretty good idea-ish. If we can just consolidate some of these parachutes. And we actually our engineer here, Laura Douglas, is qualified to repack these chutes. They can be repacked up to 5 times. In this particular scenario, I don't really see what the benefit of doing so would be. Because, I mean, really, if we have to deploy parachutes again, so many other things have gone wrong, and they're probably going to die on the surface anyway. But at least it won't be on impact. I guess that's something. Yeah. So, a lot of this right now is just consolidating a bunch of these random one-offer parts into a big collection of things. Yep, there. Hey, that hinge detached from the wheel without too much of an argument. That's interesting, because we do absolutely need to preserve these wheels. They tend to break a lot. We cannot fix them in situ. They have to be just replaced, which is why we have 3 spares in our cargo container. Yeah, now this is the fun part. I just attached this hinge to this thing to get it out of the way, and now that hinge will not detach from that little external crew cabin thing. That's fun times. Anyway, we're going to collect the structural piece while we just leave that big flappy hinge attached to the top of a cockpit piece because we can't remove it very well, and we're going to use this thing to kind of get some parts off the rover. I actually had a decent idea to get other things attached to the structural piece. And yeah, when that hinge bounced in, it sent our cockpit bit flying. Thank goodness it didn't explode. We do kind of need to preserve that thing. Alright, so let's just scoot this thing away from all the valuable stuff. Maybe we can collect some other things here. Okay, good. It's, this is so dumb. Leave seat. Whoa! Whoa! What the hell? We just stepped on a tire. Why are the thrusters firing? Oh god. Well, this is stupid. 9.9 kilometers altitude. Oh god, no. Please don't die. 17 meters per second. That's faster than the base at the ground. Oh god. Oh, 20, 30 meters per second. Lord, no. Oh god. Oh. Really? Well, you know, alright then. If getting randomly ejected into the air is fair, then so is surviving a 40 meter per second impact to the dirt. Let's get back to work. That was dumb. So we will continue on our quest to free our other cockpit module from this dumb thing. I was hoping that by attaching it to any other piece of anything that maybe it would stop reattaching itself to the cockpit, but the problem I noticed when we were airborne is that the thrusters on the ascent stage are just locked open for absolutely no discernible reason whatsoever. And I guess I could have just switched vessels to turn them off, but instead decided that I had to run over here and do something about it. So we'll also get that solar panel open, because why not? Lock all the fuel, and then realize that this thing is just sliding down the hill. No big deal. It's just leaving the the general area. Remember when we threw up the main components to this base thing? It was basically right next to the ascent stage, and why I didn't just attach the two together right then and there, I'm kind of just going to kick myself for. So while we're here, we might as well raise it up on our jack stands here and see if maybe we can't just get underneath it to service things. But of course, it being up on antennas means it has even less friction with the surface and starts to slide away even faster. I would like to prevent the slide because it's going to be really difficult to work on that dumb thing. If it's in motion, you see it's already cleared a fairly significant distance. Okay. I doubt this will work. It won't move it, but maybe it'll be able to stop it from moving? No? Maybe? Oh! Really? Oh, seriously? Okay, I like how it defaulted to the rover and not to the Kerbal that was controlling the rover. This works. Yeah, it looks like we lost a frame rail, and it was the one with the seat. Oh, good. And the ascent stage is heading right for it. There's the chair. Thank God that thing's still alive. Is this our... Yep. It's just barreling right for it. It's going to take out the rest of it. Vengeful ascent stage. Oh, come on. Is it seriously going faster than we can run? Man. I wonder where the bottom of this hill is, because that's probably where we're going to have to launch from. Oh, this is so dumb. Alright, well, please, if it explodes, I don't really want to be anywhere near it. Maybe we could just push it out of the way? Oh! Yeah, watch out for that. Yeah, sorry. Let's close these. Maybe we can mitigate the slide. Oh, thank God. I was kind of worried we were going to blow up another engine, and that would be the worst ever. So I don't know if the rover's keeping it from sliding or if it's actually just going to stop moving now. Oh, we blew up one of those life support tanks. Oh, no. All right. We're just going to push this thing out of the way, and now we have to fix it again. And even in a worse way than before. First, though, before we blow up this life support tank, because that one's going to be mission critical, we're just going to go ahead and get it attached here to the ascent stage. Now, initially the idea I had was, well, let's just remove that docking port. It's heavy, and we can just EVA across, and we're not going to use this thing for any purpose beyond just getting them to orbit. But we can't reach it, and I can't quite climb on top of the command pods. I can, however, reach that, but I can't remove the docking port. Seems kind of dumb, but you know, all right, whatever. So we're gonna transfer in what supplies we can, and then get back to fixing this rover. But that'll have to wait until next time. That's gonna do it for this one, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.